All right, guys, we've got our Week 10 NFL recap here. Sorry for the lack of videos last week or two on these, or last week. It's every once in a while I just get a point where I cannot find time and space to make the videos, and that's kind of where we're at. But we have our Week 10 NFL recap here, and hopefully we can learn a little bit here. We are coming into the second half stretch of the season where teams are going to make up their mind on what they need to do to push for the playoffs, or if they're kind of just going to play game by game, or if teams are moving on from coaches, all that fun stuff. So it's an interesting time of year. And why don't we go ahead and jump into it? We'll start here with the worst game of the week. I would say this is the worst, tied with Philadelphia's game, which we'll get to last. So we're going to bookend this video with two actively horrible games, but Las Vegas and Denver. Denver win this one 10-7. This had the makings of just genuinely horrible football, and it ended up being genuinely horrible football. Denver squeak out here on offense. It's an offense that's really not good. As simple as that. And I know there are Bo Nix people out there, but it is Bo Nix. There are dudes open every single play. Pretty much there are throws missed. There are things missed. There are just routes missed, reads missed. It's a lot, and he's just not playing well. And whether he turns that around or ever turns into a good quarterback, I don't think it will happen, but he's capable, probably, just like everyone else is. But at the moment, it's very, very bad. And this is an offense, or this is a defense that you should be able to move on. Like, genuinely, this is a really bad defense. The secondary is horrible. This is one of those teams like Dallas, like Cincinnati, like Miami, where you should be able to move the football. And the fact that you put up 10 here on a short week means a lot. It means the offense is just not really working. It's been a couple weeks. They've won a lot of games with some really light scores, and they're built for that. The defense is really good. And, again, the offense is not putting up a ton, and that's how they're going to win football games. But this team is 8-2, and it's going to be a playoff team. So winning games in the playoffs, you're going to have to put up points. It's just what's going to have to happen. Chances are teams are just going to find a way to have a go at this defense come playoff time. Happened last year with Buffalo, who put up 35. And you just don't see a world where if this team gives up 28, where they score 28 in a playoff game. So that's somewhere along the line, they're going to have to fix that. Whether they do or not, we'll see. It's up for debate, I suppose. But this team has a feeling of a team that loses, 7 games. They go like 3-4 down the stretch, get into the playoffs, and get beat comfortably round one, depending on opponent. So, weird that this team is 8-2. They continue to steal wins. They continue to do enough in the fourth quarter, but how sustainable is it? We're going to find out. Las Vegas, on the other hand, defense did enough, I suppose. Offensively, a train wreck. Geno continues to be really horrible. That contract trade, everything about that continues to be horrible, look horrible. And that's just kind of where they're at. The offensive line is missing bodies. It means Genti's not really getting into football games. They moved Jacoby Myers. So there's really very, very little on this offense. And it showed as they put up 7 and couldn't really get close to any more scores. So, Las Vegas are kind of in that ride the season out with no real offense or defense mode. And Denver have a few things to do, but they'll move on. Atlanta, Indianapolis. This happens over in Europe. Indianapolis win this one 31-25 in overtime. This was a fun one. One of the fun or more fun games of the week. Happened early for us. Jonathan Taylor continues to just be an absolute monster. The offense continues to be good. Another 30-piece here. Took a little bit of overtime, but another 30-piece here. Daniel Jones, a little bit turnover prone recently. And that will need to turn around if they want to win playoff games, because you can see with Atlanta, I don't particularly think this is a good offense. I don't particularly think it's a very good quarterback. But they put up 25, and teams are putting up their fair share on this Indianapolis defense. They go ahead and trade for Sauce, who I really like. Sauce is a top 3 corner. I know, like, Sauce's just general view is really, really weird to me. Like, that people talk about him like he's not a good corner. This is a top 3 type of corner, genuinely. He comes in, he shadows Drake London for 17 plays, gives up 2 catches for 24. And then Drake London has 11 pass snaps somewhere else and goes for 80 and a TD. Like, Sauce came in and played well, and this secondary is going to be good. The biggest problem in the NFL today with good secondaries is if you don't have good pass rush, it doesn't really matter. And that kind of showed a little bit here, and they're going to need to find some funky ways to get some pass rush, because the regular 4 aren't good enough and aren't doing it. This is a decent offensive line here in Atlanta, but if you're not getting pass rush, corners, doesn't matter how good you are. You could have the 3 best corners of all time in your secondary, along with frickin' Ed Reed and Brian Dawkins, and you can have those 5 back there, and it does not matter, because the pass rush is not getting there in 3 seconds, and covering for 3 seconds in the NFL, no matter how good you are, is very, very difficult. So they're going to need to find a way to get pass rush. If they get pass rush, then the corners are really going to show out, and you're going to see, wow, you can't really throw on this team. If there's going to be no pass rush, then it doesn't matter how good these corners are, because the ball's either going to come out quick, slants, drags, whatever, or corners are not going to be able to cover for as long as, are not going to be able to cover super, super long, and eventually somebody's going to get open. So they're going to have to figure that out defensively. Again, the defense has been a problem most of the year, but potential, I suppose, if they find some unique ways to get pressure. Offensively, again, just continues to score points. The problem, a little bit more turnover prone recently. Whether that corrects itself or not, we'll see. They'll probably be a giant part of how their season comes to an end if they're turning the ball over. But for right now, scoring points in bunches. Atlanta, good effort here. I think the defense is okay. Solid enough. There are pieces. Nothing crazy. They're very young. This is an Atlanta team that's not going to be a playoff team this year. So, finding good things here and there is kind of what we're looking for here. Penix, fine today, but again, I'm not a big Penix guy. I don't think Penix is going to be that good going forward. I don't think Penix is a starting QB in the NFL going forward, so they're going to have to figure that out. But they have good bodies on the offense otherwise. Drake London's really, really good. He had another 100 and a TD today. Bijan, very good. They have a really solid backup that they can put in on the goal line. Like, they have a lot here. There are pieces here, but just not enough in the positions that matter. And that's just kind of where Atlanta are right now. But a nice win for Indianapolis and we'll talk about the Jags later on. The Jaguars loss probably means that the Colts are going to wrap this division up sooner rather than later. Cleveland and the Jets. Jets win this one 27-20. Probably don't have to talk about this one that much, but there were some funny little quirks in this. Jets, 2 return touchdowns early, a punt return and a kick return. And at halftime, Justin Fields had 5 yards passing and an interception. So that's kind of how this game went. Breece Hall continues to run well. Gabriel played okay in this game, but you couldn't overcome the special teams problems. When you give up 2 touchdowns on special teams, it's difficult for any football team to really overcome that. And for the Browns, their formula is 20 points and holding the opponent to 17. And when you give up 14 on special teams and lose by 7, that's where it is. That's where the gap is. And again, they want to win these games 20-17. And when they give up 13 points on defense, that's the formula. It just didn't get there today because of some special teams stuff. These are 2 kind of bad football teams, and that's just kind of where we're at. None of these teams can really move the ball on offense, And defensively, they're both fine, and the Jets will probably be okay on defense. Probably not fantastic or anything. Okay, they're not a bottom 5 defense or anything, but they're not going to be like a top half-ish. And Cleveland are good at home in particular, and they were good again here today. Again, gave up 13, and 14 of it came on, or 14 more came on special teams. So the defense travels well today, or for this game here, but overall, not a game we need to pay attention to too much. A win for the Jets, one that pushes Cleveland closer to the top of the draft, where I imagine they'll probably be drafting quarterback, though this class is a little bit funky with the quarterbacks. So we'll see, but yeah, one of them games that you kind of look at and you watch quickly and you look through and find a couple little quirks, but in the end, it was two bad football teams playing each other. Jacksonville and Houston. Houston win this one 36-29. This one was Jacksonville 29-10 in the fourth quarter. And Houston come all the way back, win it. They go ahead late. They get a thick 6 to walk it off on the final play. Yeah, this was an interesting one. Really interesting one, because you look at Jacksonville and you see they put up 29 and there was not a whole lot in there. The first 3 drives, quote unquote, for Houston went interception, and then a fumble on the kick after Jacksonville drove like 20 yards for a touchdown. Then they fumbled the kickoff, and then a punt block for a touchdown. And it was 17-0 before Jacksonville could do much of anything on offense. And then they add some more points in there, and then all of a sudden Houston wake up offensively, and Davis Mills leads a variety of different scoring drives. And this Jacksonville defense, we've talked about it. It looks good because of the turnovers. When there are no turnovers, it's really bad. And Houston putting up 20 points here in the fourth quarter when chasing the game kind of shows that off a bit. They're missing a corner now with Travis Hunter missing the season, and you're missing a wide receiver a little bit. They add there at least with Jacoby Myers, but in terms of corner, not a lot there. The defense in general, not a lot there. There's some injury stuff happening on the D-line, but as a whole, down to down, it's just not great. And again, we talked about it most of the year that this Jacksonville team defensively is getting saved by a ton of turnovers, and turnovers tend to not be something that you can count on every week. And when they stop being something you can count on, then you kind of see what the real defense is, and it's kind of just a sieve. And they got some turnovers today. Didn't matter in the end as Houston come all the way back. As for Houston, I guess they saved their season. Excuse me, they saved their season. I'm not sure if it's going to get anywhere. We'll see what happens with Stroud and his concussion and all that. But, needed to win this game. Otherwise, the season was genuinely over. And they get it done. Rip it out of Jacksonville's hands. That's one of those wins for Jacksonville, or losses for Jacksonville. You win this game and you're 6-3 and you're probably a playoff team and you can go from there. 5-4, all of a sudden you're favorites to not make the playoffs, and it really flips the season. As for Houston, again, season's probably over. You lose this game and now you're kind of hoping that you can make a run here and make it interesting, at least toward the end of the season. So these two got a lot to fight for, a lot going forward. There's some talent here on Houston's defense. Offensively, we'll see. They need to play bad defenses to score points, it feels like to me still. Not a lot has changed there, but a really bad loss for Jacksonville. A really fun win for Houston. Buffalo and Miami. Miami win this one 30-13. This was comfy for Miami all day long. They were 16-0 up, never looked back. End up winning this one 30-13. Yeah, but we can talk about Miami. Miami have pieces here and there, and if they can stop the run like they did today, though we'll talk about why I thought they stopped the run. If they can stop the run like they did today, they're going to be in games. And they were in it today. And when the offense is going up against a team that doesn't have an elite defensive line, like a Houston, like an LA, or whatever, they can move the football. And they moved the football easy enough today. A lot of long TDs in there, a lot of explosives. And against the Bills defense that we've talked about isn't any good, I don't think, personally. But they took advantage, and off they went. And they'll be pretty happy. It's an interesting situation over there in Miami because I'm hoping they kind of see through it, because my thoughts originally were I'm doing what I would have done, what they would have done. Got rid of the GM, kept the coach. I think Mike McDaniel's a good coach, a good play caller, funky fella, but just in terms of the X's and O's, I think he's there. And a lot of what's happened to Miami, I think, was roster building and not necessarily coaching. But it's interesting to see a team actually do it, because teams don't normally do it this way. Teams normally just clean house and restart. For them to move on from the GM and for things to be the way they were and not fire the coach normally does not happen. So I'm kind of excited to see what happens with Miami. Tua was all right today. I don't expect him to be someone they keep around, but we'll see going forward. But a really nice performance from Miami and a really nice win for them. Buffalo. We can talk about Buffalo coming off a big win over Kansas City last week, 28-21. Then they come over down to Miami and lay a complete egg. The defense is bad, period. Like, when Baltimore were having all those injuries and everyone was like, wow, this Baltimore defense is a sieve, that is what Buffalo's defense is healthy. Like, there is very little there. Matt Milano's all right. Ed Oliver's not coming back. Brentford's all right, the corner, and he's a little bit overrated, but all right. And that's it. The defensive line's solid, not particularly fantastic. They're not going to get after the quarterback in bunches. And the defense otherwise is just a sieve. If you can block the defensive line, you are going to eat on this defense, and showed today. They ran it. Miami ran it will, passed it will, explosives all over the place. Just a really bad performance. And offensively, really interesting what's happened offensively. Joe Brady's an interesting guy, because Joe Brady, I think, is solid enough as a play caller, but Joe Brady is calling this offense like Josh Allen's not the quarterback. Like, this is an offense you call for Houston, like who had Davis Mills last week. A lot of run plays. They're running a ton. Pass rate over expectation is in the negatives. It's like 23rd in the league, which is not good when you have Josh Allen. A lot of early down runs, early down run expectancy is it's above where it should be. Obviously, they're running a lot more early down, a lot like what Green Bay did the other night, just too much running. And it's almost like you hear this kind of floated around a lot, where Joe Brady just wants to run his system and it doesn't matter what the personnel is. That's what it feels like to me. And Joe Brady's, again, fine, the system's whatever, but you have Josh Allen, and you've turned Josh Allen into a save us on 2nd and 10 and 3rd and 7 guy, and that does not make any sense to me. And we'll see if that gets fixed. It's been like this a lot of the year. They've had a couple of these performances now where teams have keyed in on it. Miami, Atlanta, they put up 14 there, put up 13 here. There are spots, and it's a bit of an issue. So we'll see what that looks like. If you're going to have any of these offensive performances in the playoffs, you're going out, period. Because like if you're scoring 20 points in the playoffs, you're going out. Like, this defense is not good enough to keep really good offenses. Baltimore, Kansas City, like, these teams are all playoff time going to score their set. Like, they're going to go between 24 and 30 every time. Baltimore, fully healthy at the beginning of the year, put up 41. Kansas City, that was like Mahomes' worst game ever, and they still put up 21 and had a chance to kind of like tie it and score points and late on in that game. Like, good teams are going to put up points on this defense. You're going to play a Chargers. You might end up playing a Chargers. You might end up playing a Colts, who are scoring 30 a game at will. Like, if you have any of these offensive performances, you're going out. So Buffalo have a lot to worry about on both sides of the football. I don't know what happens from here. It should be interesting, because, again, I think a lot of it is play calling on offense and not necessarily personnel, and not necessarily, situation. A lot of it, I think, is play calling, or sequencing is probably a better way to put it. So we'll see what that looks like. They need to throw the football more. We're going to get to another team later on who needs to throw the football more. There are plenty of teams that need to throw the football more, but Buffalo in particular, it'd be like having Lamar or Mahomes or Joe Burrow, and on first and second down, you're just running the football regardless of the situation. It drives me up a wall. New England and Tampa Bay. New England go on the road and get a nice win, 28-23. This was one of those games that could have gone either way. There was a drive late for Tampa to take the lead, couldn't quite get over the line, then a really long run. New England's offensive stat profile is really interesting. It's very abnormal. They're a team that runs a lot more than they should on first down, considering the quarterback and just the efficiency at which they run the football on first down. But they're also a team that gets a ton of explosives, and that's pretty much all down to Drake May, kind of escaping the pocket, creating on the run, that sort of stuff. A ton of it is on Drake May. So it's very, very rarely do you get football teams who can't do anything on first down, who are predictable on first down, who are inefficient on first down, who still put up a ton of explosives. And that's mostly quarterback. It's certainly not play calling, because regular play calling everywhere else is like, if you're running this much on first down and it's not getting anywhere and you have long downs a lot, most of the time it just fades away. This is very reminiscent of what Stroud was doing his rookie year, and everyone's like, wow, Stroud's playing incredibly despite everything, and then the next year it regressed. This was why, and it was very, very, very similar. It was a lot of really early downs, running up the middle stuff, a lot of save me on 3rd and 7. Stroud, save me on 3rd and 7. Drake May, and they're saving him, and it just keeps on piling. If this hits a brick wall at some stage, if this hits a brick wall at some stage, you're going to know why, because eventually it just kind of comes back down to earth a little bit. But again, Drake May is playing really well, continues to play well. Again, that's what keeps me from thinking of New England as like a top 5 type football team. It's that stuff. It's the play calling. It's the way they use a variety of different players on offense. A lot of it feels not smoke and mirror, but a lot of it feels unsustainable. So we're going to see what the back end of their season looks like. They have a game, I think they play Baltimore and Buffalo back to back, and then other than that, they have a really nice schedule. And that Buffalo loss puts them in a spot where if they win the Buffalo game at home, they're winning the division. If they lose to Buffalo and lose to Baltimore and win every other game, they're probably winning the division, which is a hell of a lot better than what was expected of them early. So, another good win here against a good opponent on the road. An unhealthy opponent, but a good opponent. And again, Tampa had a chance late on to win this game, couldn't quite get it done, and then gave up that huge explosive. But they were driving for the lead pretty late here, couldn't quite get it done, which is a lot of what Tampa have been doing all season. Early, we talked about it, where it was like, Tampa aren't playing super, super well, but they're connecting on that final drive and winning games on that final drive. Another one here, except this one just could not quite get over the line. But they're very injured, and this has just been Tampa's deal all season. Are they going to get healthy in time for the playoffs? I have no idea. They've got one weapon on offense for the most part right now, Igbuka, who played well. But Baker is playing all right, missing some stuff still. And that's just kind of what it's been like for, I don't know if he's hurt or not, and that might genuinely be the case. But he's been missing some stuff over the past couple of weeks. Igbuka's the only real wide receiver currently available. Godwin's not available. Mike Evans not available. McMillan's still not back. Bucky Irving's still not back. Linemen drop, it feels like, every week. So they have a lot to deal with, but not getting there. And defensively, for the most part, it's solid enough. They can get to the quarterback, and Drake May did a good job again of escaping pressure here. And they do a really good job of plugging the middle up, Vita Vea and stuff like that. Their outside stuff difficult for them on the run. They need to get better at that, and the secondary needs to get a little bit better just in general. But look, I firmly believe this team, fully healthy, can make a push come playoff time, genuinely be a really tough out. Will they get healthy? I have no idea, but a fun one there in Tampa. Giants, Bears. Giants lose this one 24-20. Bears win this one 24-20. I'm not sure why I did it the other way. But the Bears get over the line here. This looked like it was going to be a loss for them for a really long time. Early score, and then it was, 20-7, 17-7, very quickly. Dart gets hurt, and that's probably what saves Chicago a little bit here, because he was moving the ball pretty well. Russ comes in, bad Russ. And then Chicago go ahead and get over the line late, and this is a Giants team who we've talked about. I absolutely hate the defensive coordinator. He is terrible at this, and he is particularly terrible at holding on to leads because he is way too conservative in the way he calls games late. Those last drives, I mean, I always point to this one, but the Dallas one is such a giant tell that they needed 13 yards, 14 yards, and they had 3 men on the line or 4 men on the line, and every other player on the field was back past that mark, and it was just a catch, nobody near him, and he was where he needed to get to for the game-tying field goal. That's the type of stuff that happens with Shane Bowen. This Giants team has blown 4 10-point leads on the road in the fourth quarter this year alone, and a lot of that is down to the way they play defense late, and credit to Chicago, they go ahead and take advantage of it. We'll talk about the Giants quick. There's just not a lot on offense. Andrew Thomas being there is huge, and Dart is really good at creating outside the pocket, outside of schedule and stuff like that, and he's getting much better at the regular down-to-down stuff, but then he gets himself a concussion on a QB run. We talked about that, though. To be fair on this one, this wasn't him diving headfirst into a player, so we'll forgive him a little bit for that, but the concussion felt like it was coming all year long, and it finally has. Which isn't good. And then, the defense gives it up there in the end. Giants fire Daboll as well. As a Giants fan, I don't have a problem with this as long as Bowen and Kafka go also. I need all of it done. Just clean sweep out. I like Daboll. There were a lot of detail things they seem to miss pretty constantly every week. And the way they throw games away, not good. The kicker situation is crazy. It feels like every week there's an issue with the kicker. That kind of stuff, just this little details here and there that you're supposed to be getting down. You're supposed to be smacking down perfectly. Those were costing him games his entire tenure. And I like Daboll, but I don't have an issue with this whatsoever. And out he goes. So we'll see what the new regime looks like. Shane is going to stay, and this past draft probably saved his life, but he'll be picking the next coach, and we'll see what that is. As a Giants fan, I'm personally hoping for Kubiak, but we'll see. As for Chicago, another win puts them at 6-3. They needed to win this. They've had a 3-4 stretch where they played the Saints, the Giants, and the Bengals, and then the Ravens are also in there. They didn't beat the Ravens, but probably should have if you feel good about this team. And then they won the other 3. They needed to win at least 3 of these games because their schedule at the back half is really, really difficult. And I'm not personally a huge believer in this football team yet. I need to see the offense perform in environments. They're going to play Green Bay. They're going to play Philly. They're going to play Detroit. They're going to play Minnesota next week away from home. They need to perform well against these defenses for me to feel good about Chicago offensively, because all year they've been beating bad defenses, which is all great, but the good defenses they come up against have kind of been kicking their ass a little bit. So there's a lot I need to see out of Chicago still, but they get to this point 6-3. You're hoping that a playoff spot, if you can win 4 down the stretch, will get you in. Probably will. Maybe 3 if things fall apart in a variety of different other spaces, but probably 4 wins needed here, and they're going to have to beat some good defenses along the way. So an interesting run coming. I didn't think the offense was very good today, except in chase mode and script mode. And that's kind of what they've been all year. So we'll see what that looks like going forward. But yeah, so I don't have too much thoughts on Chicago when they play bad teams. They've proven that they can at least do enough against some of these bad teams to kind of stay ahead. Now it's time to see if they can make that threat against some good teams going forward. Baltimore 27, Minnesota 19. This was an interesting one. Baltimore get over the line, and because of the Steelers' loss to the Chargers, which we'll get to, are comfy favorite for the division now. They're only one back after being 1-5 earlier. So they've got a good stretch coming. This was one of their tougher games remaining, period. And they get over the line away from home. It started slow. They were 10-3 down, I think. And I think they started off with 4 field goals in a row. And it was interesting. They were just very few, if any, explosives today whatsoever out of Baltimore. And it's felt that way for a couple weeks since. And there's to be expected. There's been a ton of injuries, and the offense is kind of just getting back. And Lamar is just kind of getting back, and that's fine. But very few explosives. And a whole lot of 11-play drives, field goal, 10-play drive, field goal, like a ton of that. And then they eventually turned a couple of them into touchdowns in the second half. But I think Baltimore is still kind of getting to grips to things. And this is a tough defense to scheme for. Just in general, it's very, very unique. A lot of blitzes, a lot of funky things. But they did enough here to score 27 in the end and grab themselves a pretty important win against a team that's kind of frisky for the most part because of a variety of different things. Defense was good again today. They gave up 19 total, is some late garbage time stuff. But they've been fully healthy for 3 weeks now and have played really well over those 3 weeks. So we'll see if that can continue as the season goes along. As for Minnesota, not a ton that they would like defensively in terms of keeping Baltimore from having extended drives. Obviously, having a ton of methodical drives against is not good. Keeping them away from explosives is nice. Obviously huge. That's a giant part of everybody's game plan. You keep them from creating explosives, and they have to drive on you. They got to drive and drive and drive and drive. Problem with Baltimore and the problem with Minnesota today is that they did just continue to drive and drive and drive and drive, and they couldn't really get off the field at any stage. So the defense has been funky for a couple weeks. So we'll see if they can pick that back up. I'm not so sure they can. I don't love the personnel on it, but it is what it is. Offensively, interesting. A lot of Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason not getting a ton of run. The offensive line is kind of beat up. JJ McCarthy is not playing particularly well, and more importantly, not on the same page as Justin Jefferson. And Justin Jefferson's kind of in that mode where he's not being a diva, but you can see the body language is not there. And that's all coming together and not being particularly good on the offensive side. So it's a frisky team, I still think. There's talent and ability, and the coaching's good for the most part. That they're going to be frisky in games. You can't go into games and expect to kind of walk over this Minnesota team. They play a division game against Chicago next week, which should be interesting, but I'm not so sure this team has a playoff push in them, and they may be more in the development stage for JJ McCarthy this year and seeing if they can push next year depending on how things go. So interesting for both teams, 2 teams moving in separate directions, I think, but an interesting one. New Orleans and Carolina. New Orleans win this one 17-7. Yeah, we've talked about Carolina a bunch on this, and Carolina are I think the funniest team in the league. And they now surely have the weirdest resume of anybody in the league. Like, this team has that win over Green Bay. They have that 30-0 over Atlanta. And now they have that win over the Cowboys in there. Then they got their ass beat by Buffalo recently, and they probably have the worst loss of the year right now at home to New Orleans. So it's a very interesting football team. The defense is playing better. It's not great. and they're kind of getting a little bit lucky here and there, but it's playing better. It's the offense that's fallen off a bit of a cliff. At the beginning of the year, you would have thought if you're Carolina, if they're winning football games, they're winning football games like they did against Dallas, 30-27. That's the type of football game they need to win. And it's completely changed recently. Again, they beat Green Bay 16-13. They score 7 here, give up 17. Very few points. And again, it's been a complete flip on what the expectation was. And look, I know Carolina come up with wins here and there and stuff, but it's not a good football team. And I'm not so sure about this playoff push. Everyone's kind of just popped up saying, I think this team may still go under their win total, which was 7.5, I think. But the offense is just not clicking. Bryce Young is, I think we're at the point where we can kind of say Bryce Young ain't it. Defense, again, playing better. But if the offense isn't scoring points, it doesn't matter how good the defense is playing. So we'll see what that looks like going forward. As for New Orleans, Shuck played well today, threw for almost 300, solid, but couldn't quite do enough to go ahead or could do enough. They didn't have to stretch and chase this football game. So a good performance out of Shuck. Not so sure Shuck is the guy, but we got to try him out before the draft next year. And they get a nice win on the road. Defense was solid here. Defense got a lot of pressure and did everything they could. So a nice win for New Orleans. Carolina team that's I think is way overrated just in general. I have a feeling that they may not win too many games going down the stretch here. All right, now we got Seattle and Arizona. We don't have to talk about this too much. Seattle run away with this one 44-22. Just one of those Seattle performances where they just blow a team up in the first quarter and then the game's done. They've had a couple of them this year. New Orleans is one. What they do, they score a touchdown on offense, get a defensive touchdown, score another offensive touchdown. In this case, they got another defensive touchdown, 2 fumble recovery touchdowns, and 2 offensive drives. And the game was 28-0 after a quarter, 35-0, halfway through the second quarter. This was dead immediately. And there's not even much we can really garner from games like that because they're dead so quickly. And normally garbage time is something you don't necessarily take actual facts from. And it's weird with Seattle because they've had a couple of games now that have been 3/4 of garbage time. So yeah, you cannot turn the ball over against Seattle like this. You can't give them points like this. The offense is playing really well. Darnold's playing really well. JSN continues to play incredibly well. They add Rashid Shaheed, who got off his mark really quickly. That's going to be a good addition, I think. And the defense is just playing well. They get a ton of pressure. They can stop the run. They have athletes. They have guys who can take the ball away. They are really, really, really talented on that side of the ball. And the offense is clicking. We talked about Kubiak before as a Giants fan. I'd love to see him there in New York, but everything is clicking for Seattle right now. Now, Seattle have a really interesting game next week. They play the Rams in what probably may decide the division. They're both 7-2. My worry with Arizona or Seattle is that I'm not so sure they've played 2 good teams this year, healthy San Fran early and Tampa Bay, and lost both these football games. So I'm interested to kind of get a look at Seattle in a really tough environment. The environment may not be tough. They're not going to LA, but on the road, division opponent, a really good division opponent, and you haven't played particularly well against good opponents so far this year. So I'm interested to see what that football game looks like, but they're very similar to the Colts right now. They're scoring, and they have a bit of a defense, so it's tough to kind of really get in and just find a ton of flaws with Seattle, other than the fact that against just schedule stuff, they haven't played particularly well against good opponents, but bad opponents, they're just going to eat you up, and they did it again today. As for Arizona, again, another game that was dead quickly. Their season's done, so they're kind of just going through the motions here, it feels like, trying to just get, some work for players who are going to be on the team next year, trying to get Marvin Harrison more involved, stuff like that. But they don't have a ton floating around right now, and their season's probably just going to cruise out. The defense is not playing particularly well, and the defense is hurt, and that's where they needed to be good. Against bad defenses, they're going to score their points. Brissett's been around long enough, and Brissett knows what to do, and they have enough bodies on offense where they play a Dallas, and they're going to score their points. Like, it's going to be that way the rest of the year, but against good defenses, it's a struggle for them to win those football games. So this was dead quick, and one of them. Detroit, Washington. Detroit win this one 44-22 as well. Not a score you see often. 2 in a row here. This was a show me spot a little bit for the Detroit offense, which had kind of been a little bit funky here and there. Not been playing at its peak the last month or so. And this was one of those spots where a Washington team's not necessarily gonna push on the bad parts of your offensive line right now. And if that's the case, then Detroit are gonna score points. They're gonna have time against this really bad secondary, and they did just that. They moved on the ground, moved through the air, did whatever they wanted in this football game on offense, and this one was dead pretty early. Washington is in that realm right now where things are kind of falling apart, and the defense is really bad, and the offense needs to keep up, and the offense has a backup quarterback who's okay, but nothing particularly great. No McLaurin. Like, season's done for Washington, and they're kind of just riding it out, and you're going to get some funky scores like this, I feel like, toward the rest of the year. Some good offenses are going to play Washington, I think, and score in bunches. So if they're going to keep up, they're going to have to go against some of these bad defenses, Washington. So like against the Dallas or against the Miami or against the Cincinnati, that's the kind of stuff they're going to need to do. Otherwise, might see a couple of lopsided scores as their season kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Rams, Niners. Another one I didn't expect to be this all over the place. It was this window in particular had a million blowouts. Rams win this one 42-26. They were up 21-0 quick. And the Niners kind of made a couple pushes there, but the Rams were too much in the end on both sides of the football. Offensive was really relatively easy, and I think they took this one a little bit personally after that Thursday night loss earlier on in the season. They made sure to not take their foot off the gas here, and they get over the line with a really nice win on the road in division. I think they're undefeated in division now, or they're 2-1 in division now. And this is another good win, and they're going to have a really interesting game next week. We talked about them with Seattle, but Stafford's playing at an MVP. Stafford's statistics are playing at an MVP level right now. He's missing throws and stuff, which doesn't show up statistically, and you kind of just look at the game and went, oh, another Stafford 4-0. It's kind of been that way most of the year, but not missing enough badly to cost them games or anything like that. And a lot of their stuff is schemed so well that it's tough for him to miss. And I'm not saying Stafford's having a bad year. I just meant on paper, it looks like he's having an MVP year, and he's going to be in that MVP conversation as long as they continue to win football games. So good for them. Good for the offense who continues to click. Puka came back, was all right here. Devontae Adams, again, they have pieces on offense. They have a very good wide receiver duo. Some kind of gadget guys that are good. The running backs are solid. The offensive line's pretty solid. Stafford's really good. It's a really good offense. And defensively, they're doing enough. Again, early on in this game, they did great. San Francisco chased a little bit, and San Francisco are well coached on offense. But you can see San Francisco's just kind of not all there. Missing defensively. The defense right now just continues to lose bodies. Mikael Williams dropped. I think that was last week. They have no pass rush here. It's going to be really difficult for San Francisco to win games against teams that can score points against them, which will be a decent amount of teams, I feel like. So this defense is getting into that territory in the bottom 6 or 7, just personnel-wise. It's really, really light. And again, offensively, they're well coached, but they're very much in rhythm type football teams, and they're still missing guys, still missing Ayuk, still missing Pearsall, still missing Purdy. There's a lot going on here with San Francisco. They're kind of a shell of themselves, of what they should be when they're fully healthy, which is an every year occurrence in San Francisco, but it's it's kind of starting to get at them. And they have a tough one next week. They go to Arizona, I think. That's frisky. So this team for San Francisco, it feels like a team on the verge of maybe falling apart altogether. As for the Rams, they win next week, and all of a sudden they're probably favorites in the NFC. We'll see. And that should be a really good football game. Chargers, Steelers, another really horrible primetime game. We've gotten a bunch of really horrible. Our last 3 primetime games were what? 10-7, 25-10, 10-7. It's been a really bad run, but it's just how she goes. And the Chargers come away with it 25-10 here. Everything that could go wrong for Pittsburgh did go wrong for Pittsburgh in this one. Rodgers was missing guys, did not play well, couldn't run it particularly well here. And defensively, it started as kind of what you needed here. Like Pittsburgh needed to get to, needed to stop the run, needed to get behind there, needed to pressure the quarterback, and they were doing that for a pretty long time. And then just interception here, touchdown here, safety, and then all of a sudden the dam opens up and it's a gap, and they're chasing, can't quite find guys in the passing game, and the Chargers kind of figured out the short game was working, and they were getting over the line in the end. Once they made their adjustments, it was difficult for Pittsburgh to keep up on either side of the football. And again, 25-10 doesn't show it. In the end, this felt like a Chargers walk away. And the only thing that kept it from being a worse score was the fact that the Steelers were doing what they needed to be doing early on. It just too much. A lot of quick offensive drives that were quick punts and defense back on the field again. And then we figure out, hey, if we can just bypass the defensive line, a lot of short throws, a lot of screens, and that was that. So in the end, good adjustments from the Chargers, which is a nice win, and they feel like an afterthought. In reality, they're very much right there. We'll see what that looks like as the season comes down the stretch. They have the Broncos play the Chiefs next week in a game where somebody loses and they're kind of in it. They're 6-3, I think it is. And they're very much in the playoffs and probably going to be a playoff team right now. And they're probably going to focus on making sure they can get the offensive line playing all right, as both tackles are going to miss the year, getting the running game right, protecting Herbert, and just getting the defense in a place that is doing enough. And they're going to focus on that down the stretch there. But they continue to win football games. They have an interesting one next week at Jacksonville, and they'll feel good about that. As for the Steelers are kind of turning into the team we talked about them being, a team that's going to be in this 500 realm. The division is not gone or anything, obviously. They're still ahead in it, but it is turned very much on its head, and the Ravens are comfy favorites at the moment. They're going to play the Ravens twice down the stretch. They have a pretty difficult schedule just down the stretch in general. It's an interesting spot to be in, and we'll see what the end of the season looks like here, but this feels like a pretty average Steelers team that's going to finish in the 500 realm, and if it does get into the playoffs, it probably gets beat. If it doesn't get into the playoffs, then then it was just not a great season, and it's not a great football team right now. But the defense has gotten guys back on the defensive line, and they're getting more pressure. But again, I don't love the corner group. Don't love the secondary. Definitely dislike the linebacker group. And we've talked about it with a variety of different teams. You could have a really good pass rush. Doesn't matter if your corners suck, because they get beat immediately, and it's just a lot of short stuff. And that's what the Chargers were doing, and everyone else is going to do it. So there are some positives there, but do they mean anything in the long run? I'm not particularly sure. And then we have our final game, Philadelphia 10, Green Bay 7. Another really actively horrible football game. Both of these teams came into this game like it was -10, and they were just trying to get the game over with. It was 25 degrees, and nobody threw the football. Two top 10 quarterbacks, as people like to say, and they weren't throwing the football at all. Making jokes in the Discord for the challenge Discord. It was like the first team to run play action on first down wins the football game. And to be fair, the Philadelphia Eagles were the first team throwing the football. They were second quarter, they were throwing it a little bit. They end up winning the football game. And it took Green Bay a really long time to get over there. I don't know what the game plan was for either of these teams, but particularly Green Bay, who were running up the middle on first and second down every single new set of downs. There were 6 pass attempts in the first 28 minutes, I think, for Green Bay. Why? The Eagles want you to run on them. They would love it if you ran on them. They have 2 gigantic guys in the middle. Jalen Carter is an incredible D tackle. Jordan Davis is a huge body. Jalen Phillips is a new ad. They would love it if you ran right up on them. And that's exactly what LaFleur was doing. He's like, yeah, we'll just keep doing it. And then it came down to throwing and nothing was happening. There was no creativity. There was just, everything was so straightforward, so easy for the Philadelphia Eagle defense. It was very, very weird to watch. Philadelphia felt like a team that at least knew that they could do other things. We'll try passing. They had that really long drive that ended in the Jalen Hurts fumble. And then they moved the ball a hell of a lot better than Green Bay did for the majority of the game. But at least they were trying stuff. Green Bay just seemed resigned to this run it up the middle twice with Josh Jacobs. We'll throw it on 3rd and 7, incomplete punt. It was really gross. And then the fourth quarter came and they're trailing by 10. And guess what happens? You have to throw the football. And guess what happens? They run right down the field and score a touchdown. This is the most frustrating game of football I have ever personally watched. I don't feel better about any of these football teams after watching it. Defensively, they're both very good, genuinely. They get good pass rush. Jalen Phillips played really, really well in his debut. And if he's going to pass rush well, that's going to up their defense quite a bit. Defensively for the Packers, I thought they played well. They let up that long TD toward the end there. It was a really good catch. He went over and Devontae Smith went over that guy and grabbed it. It was a good catch, and he's playing really well, very quietly. I think what's going on is A.J. Brown's playing poorly or not getting the work or whatever, and everyone's like, oh, what's up with A.J. Brown? And Devontae Smith has very quietly been the one here all year, it feels like, and he's been playing really, really well. But yeah, I don't feel good about any of these teams' offenses. Thought the play calling for both was not good. The play calling for the Eagles has been bad all year, and a lot of their offensive stuff that they win with is talent-based. I'm not so sure that gets them another Super Bowl here, but they're certainly talented. Green Bay, the play calling has to change. If they're not going to change the way they call games, they're not going to win anything. They're not going to win any playoff games, nothing. They're not even going to get to the playoffs at this rate. But it's a couple games in a row where they're not throwing the football, where everything is so scripted. Like, you could tell the way they line up. I believe on that 4th and 1 where they fumbled it late, I believe one of the defensive tackles for the Eagles called the play out. Like, everything is so scripted and straightforward and easy to recognize, and they need a ton of changes there offensively in terms of just how they script stuff, because the script stuff, just the stuff in general, down to down, has turned into something really horrible recently. So they're going to have to change. But yeah, another bad football game in the weather. That's how she goes. But that's our Week 10 recap. Hopefully next week we have some better football games, because there were a ton of really bad ones this week. We're in that time of year where a lot of teams are bad and kind of just cruising. And then we got a couple of primetime games that were like, what on earth? All the blowouts in the middle section. We got 3 primetime games: Philly 10-7, Denver 10-7, Charger game, all really bad. Sorry for the skip there. We're almost done anyway. But yeah, just a lot of bad football this week, and all of it seemingly when we didn't have games to have. Again, the 4 o'clock window was all blowouts. All the primetime games sucked. A lot of bad teams playing each other. Just a lot of not good football this week, and hopefully we just end up with better football next week. But that's our Week 10 NFL recap.